In a joint statement, the leaders of the United States, Egypt, and Qatar are calling on Israel and Hamas to enter ceasefire talks next week in Doha or Cairo and to get the job done. No more delays, no more excuses. They say this could be their final offer to mediate an end to the war and to bring Israeli hostages home. Patience and time are in short supply. On Friday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he'll send negotiators to the talks. The top negotiator for Hamas, well, he was killed last week. Tonight, no word on who Hamas plans to send in his place or if they plan to send anyone at all. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day. We begin the day with a major push to de-escalate in the Middle East when seemingly all signs are pointing in the other direction. In the last week, there have been 2 assassinations, a Hezbollah commander in Lebanon and the leader of Hamas in Tehran. Iran blames Israel and has vowed to retaliate, putting the entire region on edge. Now, in this powder keg, a renewed call for an end to fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. This week, the leaders of the United States, Egypt, and Qatar issued a joint statement as mediators, making perhaps their final offer. They called on both Israel and Hamas to restart ceasefire talks next week, saying there is no further time to waste nor excuses from any party for further delay. It is time to release the hostages, begin the ceasefire, and implement this agreement. Today, the Israeli Prime Minister said that he will send negotiators to ceasefire talks next week. No word from Hamas. Its main negotiator and leader was killed last week, but the U.S. says that should not stand in the way of ending the fighting in Gaza. Take a listen.
Look, I'm not going to negotiate in public at all. But I will say one thing that was true before the death of Hania and remains true today is that Sinwar was ultimately the decider when it comes to questions on these talks. And so whether he is sending messages directly or sending messages through intermediaries, he has always been the person who would decide whether Hamas agreed to a ceasefire or not, and under what conditions they would agree to a ceasefire. So we don't believe that that has changed.
All right, that's the word from the U.S. State Department. Here in the studio with me now is our Middle East analyst, Shani. Rozanes here on a busy Friday evening. Shani, it's good to see you.
Hi, Brent.
The U.S. State Department says that we don't believe anything has changed when it comes to who within Hamas calls the shots. Is that the position of Israel as well?
Yes, well, they always thought, Sinwar, the one in Gaza, is the one calling the shots. And they were also acting seemingly under this presumption when they chose to go ahead with the assassination of Hania. Presumably, Israel is behind that. So the assumption is that has not changed. If anything, Netanyahu keeps, saying that it's actually only pushing down on Hamas, isolating isolating Sinwar in Gaza. That's what will bring, Hamas to realize that they need to compromise, and that will bring some sort of a breakthrough in the talks. De facto, what's happening is that Sinwar in Gaza is consolidating power. He's Hania was somewhat of an opposition. They were not on best terms. There was a possibility, because Hania was living in Qatar, for Qatar to have leverage on Hania, to have some more, to work with. And now it's all in the hands of one hand, basically, dug down under the tunnels of Gaza.
And when we look at what is going on right now, Israel is bracing for a retaliatory attack by Iran, possibly also by Hezbollah. Hamas is not defeated. The war in Gaza rages on. And now we've got the leaders of the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar saying no more excuses. Make this deal in Gaza happen next week. Why the sudden push now?
Well, it's not the sudden push. Actually, what the Americans, Qataris, and Egyptian think is that they actually have a gift of this week that came, all of a sudden to their hands, because soon after these assassinations, there was a feeling, okay, the whole region is going out of spiral. This is spiraling, and we're losing control of what's happening. Seeing Lebanon and Iran take their time made them realize, okay, maybe there is a way in for us now. And it's all intertwined in the sense that everybody's waiting to see what the other one is doing. Israel says we'll go for the ceasefire as long as there's no escalation in the north. The Iranians say we will maybe consider the nature of our response if we see some ceasefire happening. Lebanese Chinese are not too keen on immediately going all in on Israel. And it seems like even Hamas, that was hoping, or it seemed like, a few days ago, that they're finally getting what they wanted, Israel fighting as many fronts as possible. They realized maybe this is not happening as well so easily. So they might be, more incentivized in going for a ceasefire. But this is exactly what the mediators want to do. They want to, tell the sides basically this is now a crossroad, a critical crossroad here. We're either going to a deal, to a ceasefire, to de-escalation, or things might get out of hand very fast.
Yeah, the mediators here, in their joint statement, the leaders of the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar write that this could be their final offer. They are mediators. They sound like they're running out of patience and time.
Well, the Americans definitely have no appetite for this. They're focusing on one thing, and that is November, the election in America. I know Biden, even though he can step back from the race, he knows, he has very little time still in office, and this would be, for his legacy, one of the most important things. He want to wrap it up, and he also has personal connection to the topic. You see how he talks about the hostages, how much effort him personally, he met with families, he sees them. It's a goal very dear to his heart.
Do you think his decision not to seek re-election is playing into the speed of events that we're seeing
definitely.
right now?
He knows he doesn't have too much time. He knows he has very little leverage that he can, use against Netanyahu. And more than that, everybody you speak to when it comes to the Israeli, Israel is trying to watch the condition of the hostages, the little that they do know about them. They say, we are playing against time. Those people that are there for almost 308 days now, they don't have time. They're losing, of course, the conditions they're in, we know more and more of them are probably not with us anymore. And the longer we wait, the bigger the chances are we'll only be bringing back coffins, sadly.
Netanyahu was quick to agree to send the negotiators next week. It makes him look like he's a natural participant in peace.
Well, Netanyahu is important for him to seemingly be interested in a deal. And he's been keeping up this, line of, I am all for it, for at least 2 months. It's been, Joe Biden has presented this deal to the world already at the beginning of June, and nothing has actually substantially changed since, if any. If you listen to high-ranking officials in the Israeli Defense Ministry and other services, they say they feel Netanyahu is actually trying to keep more and more hurdles, kind of trying to change, withdraw some of his consent to certain parts of the deal, while at the same time promising to the world, to the families, to Biden, oh, I'm all in. So this is a rift growing between Netanyahu and the people running the war on the more professional side on the defense levels. And, there's also this distrust that is, growing within the Israeli public and, of course, the families of the hostages who are very much afraid that Netanyahu is led by political needs and not much by the need to bring back the hostages.
Are you surprised that we haven't seen Iran retaliate already? Is there the sense in Israel that Iran is being sucked into the Palestinian cause more so than it wants to be?
For a while, it felt like, we were on the verge of this is actually happening. This is going to be a regional war where Iran is stepping directly in. What we've, the restraint that we've seen so far, and let's make sure that we put an emphasis on the so far part in this, maybe hinting to us that, even October 7th, we know was not coordinated with the Iranians. They did not know it's about to be launched at that specific date. I'm not sure how much they were in the in and outs of the whole plan. And they've been trying to show solidarity, same with Hezbollah. They've been trying to show solidarity with the Palestinians, but at the same time, keep it at an arm's length, being able to focus on their interests. And this happened just as at the inauguration of a new president. His agenda had the sanctions, the nuclear arms, many other things ahead before fighting the fights of the Palestinians. Being sucked into that war will divert attention and might be very consequential for the Iranians. Yes.
Let me ask you, you got 30 seconds here. The Israeli hostages, you brought those up earlier. Are these talks next week the final chance to bring those who are still alive, to bring them home?
Some people say they are. Let's keep in mind, Thursday is a long time in the Middle East. We'll have to see if there's any escalation. If we will see high tensions flaming up in the north, it could be that this is not going to make any progress, and this could be maybe the last chance.
And we'll see what happens next week, that's for sure. Shani, good to have you here in the studio.
Brett.
Thank you for coming in on Friday night. Thank you. Israel has confirmed that it will send negotiators to Gaza peace talks next week in either Doha or Cairo. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he has agreed to the talks at the request of international mediators. World leaders are pushing for talks to restart. Hamas, however, has yet to respond. The recent assassination of a Hamas leader in Tehran, widely blamed on Israel, has raised tensions, and some fear the operation has hindered peace efforts. Hamas was behind the October 7th attacks on Israel. It is regarded by many countries as a terrorist organization. Aaron David Miller is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He focuses on U.S. foreign policy and the Middle East, and he joins me now. Mr. Miller, it's good to have you with us on this Friday evening. We've heard it before that hopes of reaching a ceasefire deal have been revived. We're hearing it again now, or at least that's what's being implied with this joint statement that was released yesterday. Is it different this time?
It may be. Based on my experience, 20 plus years in being involved in Arab-Israeli negotiations, Israeli-Palestinian negotiations as well, they seem to have two speeds, traditional negotiations, slow and slower. This is not a traditional negotiation. The primary Palestinian decision maker is ensconced meters below ground in Khan Yunis, Rafah, probably surrounded by the remaining hostages, those dead and those that are still alive. So the real question is the Biden administration, the international community, much of the Arab world, the United Nations, everybody's in a hurry to reach a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The real question, which is impossible to answer, is whether Benjamin Netanyahu and Yahya Sinwar, the principal decision maker, recently elevated to become the political head of Hamas, not that he was anything other than that, making critical decisions from Gaza before, it really rests with their calculations. And it may well be that for any number of reasons, there's a better chance than ever that you could get an agreement, at least to get through phase one.
Why do you say that?
I think time and pressure on both parties. It's clear CIA Chief Bill Burns confirmed a month or so ago that Hamas's commanders are under pressure from an unrelenting Israeli campaign. Sinwar must pay some attention to the devastation and humanitarian catastrophe that he has caused for the 2.3 million people of Gaza. As far as Mr. Netanyahu is concerned, the Knesset is in recess. It's almost impossible to bring down an Israeli government during that period. If he wants to do the deal, he's more or less immunized from pressure from his two extremist ministers. So, as I mentioned, I think there's a real possibility of an agreement, but only to take us through phase one, which is essentially limited exchange of hostages, roughly 30, alive and dead, in exchange for an asymmetrical number of Palestinian prisoners, maybe 50 Palestinian prisoners for each Israeli, a six-week ceasefire. And if you could get that, maybe, and I'll stress very cautiously and soberly, maybe you could think about getting to a cessation of hostilities, a permanent cessation of hostilities, but that's going to be a very heavy lift.
I heard today from several analysts that Netanyahu's motivation here is simply, I will go with the good optics. I will send negotiators to these talks next week. We will agree to what's on the table. It's been on the table since May anyway. And as you say, after the first phase is over, then Israeli troops can go right back into the campaign to destroy Hamas in Gaza. Is that how you see it?
Well, I mean, that's how I see it in large part because, and again, it's not one hand clapping. Hamas is a key player in this, obviously. I just don't see anyone that Yahya Sinwar will give up the 50 remaining hostages that he'll hold. That is the male IDF and civilians that he holds for anything other than a complete cessation of hostilities. And as long as Yahya Sinwar is the leader of Hamas, and Hamas appears to be a viable organization, there is no way Benjamin Netanyahu is going to agree to a permanent cessation of hostilities. Their end games are mutually irreconcilable. And that's the problem we're going to face. There is no strategic solution to Gaza. We didn't even talk about the emerging escalation that we may face on the Israeli-Lebanese border any day now, which is going to have an impact on what's planned for next Thursday in either Doha or Cairo.
Well, we will definitely be watching events next week, and as you say, it is a powder keg. Every day can change. Mr. Miller, it's good to have you on the show. Good to get your analysis tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
As the families of Israeli hostages wait for their loved ones to be freed, the people of Gaza are also desperate for the fighting to end. The Hamas-run health ministry there says that almost 40,000 people have been killed in the war in Gaza.
10 months into Israel's war with Hamas, thousands of Gazans are again forced to flee. Many have moved multiple times to escape the fighting. Now they're leaving Khan Yunis as Israel steps up its attacks once again.
There's no safe area. I'm telling you, we cannot find a place to stay. We're thrown in the streets. I'm calling on them to see us because we are tired. By God, we are tired. By God, we are tired.
It's not just Israel's attacks that shatter any sense of security. A lack of food, clean water, and basic supplies means it's a daily struggle to survive.
We are tired of this life. By God, death is better than this. Let the country see our situation and find a solution. We are tired. We've died 100 times.
Israeli attacks have hit 2 schools in Gaza City in recent days. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency said more than 18 people were killed. The Israeli military said it struck Hamas command centres.
Well, I'm joined now by journalist Balig Sladeen. He's in Tel Aviv this evening. Balig, let me ask you, the mediators here, the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, they say that they only need to work out the details of implementation of a ceasefire, that Israel and Hamas need to just get the details out of the way. What are the sticking points for Israel?
Well, the sticking points are the same. Basically, the 4 points that Netanyahu designated as his red lines. First of all, the Israeli presence in the Philadelphia corridor, the border between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, in which Israel believes that Hamas smuggles through the tunnels their weaponry, and that's what we're seeing every day by the IDF that exposes more and more tunnels in that area. So Israel wants to have a presence there. That's first. The second point is the fact that Israel doesn't want any person who is armed to go back to the north of the Gaza Strip, the area that Israel wants to keep as free of any of the armed groups in the Gaza Strip. And maybe the most important disagreement that has no solution yet, and I don't think that there will be any solution of it, that Israel wants to resume the war after the after the end of the first phase of the deal. And Hamas, of course, they want Israel to declare that they are stopping the war so they can guarantee for themselves that they keep their position in the Gaza Strip in the day after.
What is your sense? Is Netanyahu, is he sending negotiators in good faith to these talks? Or is he willing to sign on to a ceasefire agreement if the sticking points are clarified? Or is this just more window dressing or buying time for a leader who wants to, stay in power?
Well, there is political incentive for every politician out there. But when Netanyahu sends this delegation, I don't think that anyone in Israel thinks that we are getting closer to a deal. Basically, a source in Israel said today that the disagreements are still very wide, and the expectations should be limited, that nothing will actually change Yahya Sinwar's position, and specifically talking about Yahya Sinwar, who became right now also the political leader of the Hamas movement. The belief in Israel that he doesn't want a deal right now because of the regional escalation, because he wants a regional war, at least some escalation that can be benefiting for him for the ultimate goal of destroying Israel, or at least the continuation of this ongoing not exactly war, but the whole situation between Israel and Hezbollah and Iran and the other proxies.
Okay, but we will certainly be following developments, as we know you will as well. Journalist Balig Sladeen in Tel Aviv tonight. Balig, thank you.
Thank you.